It's been 6 years of podcasting, and without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to bring these podcasts to you. So I want to thank today's sponsors. And first off, we have the Pretentious Pickle Company of 190 Water Street in Plymouth. If you haven't had a chance to get down there, go down and check out what they make. They have everything pickled you can imagine, from pickled beets to carrots to mushrooms to onions to Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. They even have pickled or pickled flavor cotton candy, I should say. They make it fresh there every day, and you can go in there and check out what they have to offer. And if you're not in the Plymouth area, you can go to pretentiouspickle.com and check out what they have to offer there as well, and they will ship it out to you. Their stuff is delicious. You should check it out, and they are big fans of ours, and we are big fans of theirs. So thank you to the Pretentious Pickle Company for sponsoring today's episode. And our second sponsor today is Moonrise Cinemas. Moonrise Cinemas is a new drive-in in Plymouth. Right on the Plymouth-Kingston line. They are located at 428 Court Street in Plymouth, Mass. And they offer a great selection of movies. You can go. It's very family-friendly. I went and checked out the Goonies there. They've had Marvel movies, a wide variety of stuff. And they're really starting to expand. They have had the Rocky Horror Picture Show this coming year. They're doing music on Thursday nights. On Wednesdays are going to be 420 friendly events. So make sure you check out what they have to offer. MoonriseCinemas.com. It's a great venue. They have a beer garden. They have their own food. Their food's phenomenal. And they're bringing back their French toast, which I'm very excited about. So make sure you check out what they have to offer, MoonriseCinemas.com. And if you use code Inebri-art when purchasing tickets, you'll get 10% off. So make sure you go to MoonriseCinemas.com to get your tickets for movies, concerts, and more, and use code Inebri-art for 10% off on your purchase. And now let's jump right into the podcast. Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, as always, on the Inebri-art podcast. And we are always trying to bring new and interesting creative types onto the show. I'm joined today by my co-host of the Old Connie. I always forget about you, Hanna. I do that all the time.
It's okay.
Hanna from the Old Connie cast is joining in today. What's up, Hanna?
Hey, this is new. I like fully expected you to do that. I should have given you a heads up.
Well,
on me at this point, yeah.
Whatever. Get used to it. We're like 100 episodes in. It's not going to change. So we're bringing in new and creative people, and we went to Hanna, myself, and Fish went to King Richard's Fair, and they have their performers. And when you can get a news radio personality / circus performer, why not? So Jack Lepiarz.
Very well. Did
I get it? All right. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So I think the thing that intrigued me most was the kind of random mix of kind of creative fields you're in. So how does one become a circus performer / news person?
So I think it really goes back to my weird dichotomy of growing up, which is my father was and still is a circus performer. Mm-hmm. And my mother is now a retired college professor with a doctorate. So very different worlds, very different parenting styles. I mean, actually not really different parenting styles, but very different sort of, I think, ideas of where they wanted me to go. My father was fine with me performing. My mother did not like my performing at all. And so I, from a very young age, had it very much instilled in me, you're going to get an education, you're going to go join the real world. But at the same time, I was, when I was performing, I was like, I can make so much better money doing, going out to Harvard Square in Boston and doing a street show than I can, working at Cold Stone Creamery for $6 an hour, because that was my first job.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Or working, there's my cat. or working at an ice cream shop for, $8 an hour 2 summers later. It was sort of like, okay, I can make much better money doing this. So why don't I do this? And then by the point it got to the point where I no longer needed to perform because my journalism career had gotten to the point where it could pay the bills, I was still like, this is still good money for what amounts to, at this point, 13, 14 weekends of extra work a year. And I was like, well, let's keep this going. Let's do it as long as we can. And that's where we are.
So is it just King Richard's Fair? No, that's not 13 weeks. Is it 13 weeks?
No. So King Richard's is 8, 18 days total with the 2 3-day weekends. But then in years past, I've done the Louisiana Renaissance Fair, couple of other random shows that pop up here and there. I did New Jersey for a few years, but it's been a couple of years since I've been back. I may be back there in 2023. But it's sort of, everything is kind of on a year-to-year basis. Yeah. So I hesitate to say, I'll definitely be back there next year.
Oh, especially now. I memean, who knows? But so your dad was like, did he legit perform, like traveled the circus, elephants, tents, that whole sort of thing? When
I was born, we were touring with the Big Apple Circus. So we did that until I was 6. And at one of the stops, our trailer was right next to the elephants. So yeah, they smell. Fun fact.
Was he also whip based? I don't know. Is there a title for that?
Whippersnapper? I don't know. I think just whip cracker works.
Yeah.
But no, he wasn't whip based per se, but he certainly did whips. Some of the routines I do are actually old whip routines of his. But he does a little bit of everything. He does magic. He does balancing. He does whips. He does knife throwing. He does what he did this past year at King Richard's. He does a tablecloth routine where he'll stack up pitchers on the table, pull the tablecloth out of it, nothing falls. And then the big thing he does is he has a child sit on a chair on the table and then pulls the tablecloth out from underneath them.
Oh, yeah. I feel like that's, God, how do you get insurance for that? I feel like nowadays, yeah, that's crazy. So at what point did you get like baby's first whip? Like what age start getting?
I cracked a whip I first cracked a whip when I was 7. We were working at like a summer camp in Pennsylvania, I think. And we were teaching circus as part of like their special activity week or something. And so I learned how to crack a whip, which like in hindsight means that my father was just handing out whips to children, 6 and 7 years old, being like, here, give it a shot. Good luck. And like, you couldn't pay me enough money to do that without like putting them in a full suit of armor first.
Yeah.
But so that was where I learned to crack the whip, but it wasn't until I was older, because I went through this phase where I wanted nothing to do with the circus until I, got a regular job, made $6 an hour, hated it. And my dad called me up, was like, hey, I need you to help me with this show. It'll be $200 for a day's worth of work. And I was like, well, okay, that's much better.
Yeah.
And then I started learning some of the tricks that I needed to learn. He got me a whip for Christmas when I was 17, my senior year in high school. And I took that out in the backyard and basically trained with it for probably at least an hour a day, basically until the spring. And then I kind of got most of the tricks that I had now down in that time span.
I gotta assume that there were have you ever really hurt yourself?
I have hit myself so many times. As far as really hurt myself, I've hit myself in the eye 2 or 3 times. That including the first day when I was 7, and I was terrified because 1, I was like, did I just blind myself? And 2, my father, who I was terrified of, just because he's a big, strong guy with whips.
Yeah.
Had been like, don't do anything stupid with the whips. So, and then of course I go and I try and do something stupid and I hit myself in the face, in the eye.
And then you're like, it was an icicle that fell off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'll shoot. Yeah, exactly. You'll shoot your eye out. No, It was exactly what it was. I was trying so hard to cover it up. I don't think he noticed. He's never mentioned it, and he didn't mention it then. But as far as I think the worst I ever got myself actually was at King Richard's Fair. We used to do a bit towards the end of the show with the torture show back when it was a 2-person act.
Yep.
give us $1 and we'll do something stupid. And it was either one of us would get whipped or one of us would get hit over the head with a cookie sheet. And they put in the money for the getting whipped. And so I went to go do a sort of a side crack to wrap it around the guy I was working with. And it got caught on a rock or something. This was Wick.
Okay.
Sess was like walking around me like, put $1 in the hat, folks. It's over. And so I go to crack the whip, and it must have got caught on a rock or something, because it came right across the back of my neck, and it left a cut.
Oh.
And because it did that, it didn't crack, which means it actually hurt more when it hit Wick. Oh, so wow. I'm holding my neck. Wick's holding his side, and Sess is walking around like, folks, that's what we call a twofer. Now put $1 in the bucket.
Anything to get another $1. That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was still in college at the time, and I'm in class 2 days later, and I just feel someone tap me on the shoulder, and they're like, Jack, what happened to your neck? I'm like, I just look at them, I just make the motion of a whip crack, and they're like, oh, okay. We don't care anymore.
Yeah, how do you even when you meet someone new and they're like, oh, what do you do for a living? Do you just be like, oh, I'm a journalist, and not even get into the...
It's hard because even saying I'm a journalist invites a whole different set of questions.
Yeah.
So it's really a question of how much do I want to go into what I do? And depending on how much I think I'm going to see this person / how much I want to talk to this person, it's a lot of I might just say oh, I work in radio, and just move on from there. But if it's someone that I'll probably talk to a little bit more, I'll say, yeah, I work in radio, or I work for the NPR affiliate in Boston. And I usually don't bring up the circus, just because that's a conversation I've had literally since I was 5 years old. Every time I meet someone, and I've had to have conversations with friends of mine. I'm like, can you stop introducing me as, hey, this is Jack. He works in the circus. Because I've had that conversation so many times in my life. I'm like, yes, I grew up in the circus. My dad was in the circus. I learned how to crack whips because I want to learn the cool tricks. It's all those questions you've gotten a million times. And by all means, don't shy away from those questions. I'm glad
we totally started with those exact questions.
No, I'm used to it by this point. But it was
funny.
In a normal personal conversation, I don't necessarily want to lead with that.
It's so funny. I had this conversation. I was doing an interview with a musician yesterday, and somehow a very similar conversation came up, and she was saying, oh, she doesn't get asked what she does. And I'm like, I get asked constantly, and I never know how to answer it. I'm like, I think I'm just going to start saying I'm a dentist, or just pick I'm a welder, and just leave it at that.
Well, I'd imagine it's the same for you. What do you do? Oh, I'm a podcaster. And it's what podcast do you do? Where can I find it? What do you talk about? What do you do? Okay, all right.
And then that cuts out the whole event stuff that we. So I'm like, yeah, it's really hard to explain. And so then I'll be like, oh, we, create and promote events, and we create online content. And they're like, well, what do you? And then it becomes a whole conversation.
Wow, I've never felt luckier to just be a retail manager.
You got to start adding in the podcast. It's amazing. There, Hanna. You have fans.
One day. Takes the ease off the conversation for me, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then how long have you been in radio? Let's start there.
Radio, I started doing in Boston in 2006. Actually, not just in Boston. 2006. I came to Emerson College. They have a really good college radio station. So I went and I worked there for 4 years. When I graduated, I interned at WBUR and got a job right out of school. So go back to 2006. So that's 16 years at this point. 16 years in the fall.
Jeez. And
I've been at BUR since 2010. And I count the internship because I was doing a lot of stuff, that I then continued doing as a freelancer and as a full-time person. So January 2010, so 12 years at BUR.
And when you got into radio, was it news that you wanted to do, or is that just kind of where the internship ended up?
I did a semester doing DJing music at ERS, my college station, and immediately knew I was this is not for me. Music has never been something that I know a lot about. It's like sort of, I'll know what's popular. I know what used to be popular, but there are these big gaps in my musical knowledge. I couldn't tell you like, oh, the drummer of that band did a side project with this band. And, that kind of stuff has never had any kind of sticking power in my brain. And when I was DJing, I just felt like, and that was that song we just played. Coming up, here's this song that we're about to play.
Yeah.
So it was, and I kind of just found it boring. Whereas news, I felt like, okay, there's a little more something going on. I have to be a little bit more invested. I have to know what I'm talking about a little bit more, obviously.
and I'm almost afraid to ask, like, what was that like over the past like 2.5, 3 years?
It was when it first started, it was funny because one, I was the only anchor at BUR who never got sent home to record from home or broadcast from home.
Oh, really?
I think they wanted to always have at least one person in the building just in case like technology exploded. We need someone to go on the air right now.
Yeah.
The other issue is I have a cat who is the loudest cat you will ever meet in your life. And I'm shocked that he hasn't said anything yet while we've been recording. But he and I have full conversations. And I did it like test record in my bedroom one time. I was like, all right, let me close the door. And I started recording. And within 30 seconds, you hear on the other side of the door, meow, meow. Scratch, 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 meow. There we go. I don't know if you heard that, but no, he's a very loud cat, and I was like, it's not going to work unless you want Scipio the cat to join in for our newscasts.
What was his name?
So, Scipio.
Okay.
All my cats are named after like old Roman leaders and Roman generals, which I always feel like needs to be followed up with. Like, I'm not one of those weird people who's like, the Roman Empire was awesome and we should go back to that, because I feel like it's been co-opted by certain political elements. And I'm like, I've liked Roman history since I was in my 6th grade. Why are people like showing up with like Roman legionary mottos at weird protests? But now that that's out of the way.
So do you find that these two kind of sides of yourself scratch a different creative itch?
I would say so. It's weird because it's almost like diametric opposites in terms of. I would say so.
That to me, that's the most fascinating part.
Well, yeah, because at BUR or in journalism, you're never supposed to be the story, but in performing, everything's about you. You are the draw. You're the reason. You have the audacity to assume that people will sit in your benches and watch you and just you for 30 minutes. So it's a very weird kind of mindset shift, first off. But it is nice because sort of, I think performing gives me, for lack of a better way to describe it, the attention that I crave. Whereas being on the air and working in journalism, I feel like I can do something a little bit more meaningful. Not to say that making people laugh and being able to forget their troubles is not meaningful, because I think that's extraordinarily important right now. But keeping people informed in March of 2020 was far more important than making people laugh at that point in time. Yeah. So it's I would say, I don't know if scratching a creative itch is the right way to describe what I do in journalism, but it does feel like I'm able to have a little bit more purpose to my work. And I feel satisfied from what I do, both in performing and on the radio, but it's a different kind of satisfaction.
It's almost like job security. It's like, let me bum you out with the news, and then
right.
cheer you up on my show.
Well, if you're so sick, we had a joke at King Richard's one time of the MC of the show. I was not in this show, but the MC goes, "If you are a part of any sort of fake news organization, please leave now." And I stick my head out from the curtains like, dude, I'm right here. Come on. Just go right back.
And what made you make Jacques, I'm going to do air quotes, French?
French.
Yeah. French.
So this was the conversation I had with my dad in 2007, which was when I was trying to go from street performing to start doing Renaissance fairs, which is my dad, who had a very successful Renaissance act for many years. He said, the point of Renaissance fairs, not the point, but you can have a very successful Renaissance fair act with very little actual skill. The comedy is more important. The character is more important. And so you already have the skills, is what he told me. What you need the character to make those skills appealing. And so we were sort of going, figuring out what Jack the Whipper, which is what my stage name at the time was, what his personality was going to be. And my dad just kind of threw out, I was like, oh, you could even be French and draw a little French mustache. Oh, that'd be great. I am Jacques Ze Whipper. And I was like, that's really dumb. That's really dumb. And I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, all right, if I don't do that, I'm gonna have to do an English accent. So I guess I'll be French instead. I took 7 years of French in middle school through college. So I'm like, all right, my French is passable. So I tried that. I did not draw on the mustache at first.
Yeah.
And it went fine. And then like the last day of the opening weekend, I was like, all right, let me try drawing on the mustache. So I drew on the mustache, and it was like everything clicked. People understood that it was a comedy show. They understood that it was a dumb show. They understood that you're supposed to laugh. And now I really like it because it kind of diffuses, I think, the tension that comes with whips at times, where people are like, why is that guy got a whip? What's he doing? What's he do on his own time?
Yeah.
And, I think just making people understand that the show doesn't take itself all that seriously helps a lot. So I think that was sort of the initial conversation, and then sort of how the show's, evolved to that point. A lot of it has been sort of just unintentional, of like figuring out where the character is and just going from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things like I really like about Ren Fairs is, you can go to like Plymouth Plantation or Plymouth Patuxent, whatever they're calling it. And, where they stay in character, like a Ren Fair is more like a medieval dad joke. Like the whole thing is like bad puns and intentionally moderately okay jokes told with like, it's bad, right?
So that's so true. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's and I cringe because I'm like the worst offender in terms of that. They're like dedicated. Oh yeah, they're like dedicated points for dad jokes in there. I mean, I've got the whole soliloquy of Nicolas Cage references while holding a Nicolas Cage pillowcase.
Oh right. I remember that.
Yeah. You gotta keep your animals in a cage if you're dealing with wild animals. It's very important.
That's right. What is your favorite dad joke outside of your act? Do you have it?
Outside of my act? Oh man, I think I got to go with the classic, which is just "Hi, Dad," or "Hi, hungry, I'm Dad." That's just like it's so universal. Yeah. It's so disdained, and it's so you can adjust it for any moment in time. If you say this is the Inebri-art podcast, you could say, "Hi, Inebri-art podcast. I'm Dad." Or if you say, I think I'm cold. Hi, cold. I'm Dad. There's so many ways to evolve that joke, not evolve, but reuse it.
Yeah, and that's what that makes a good dad joke, is you can just kind of like
just use it over.
It's almost the opposite. It's almost the opposite of a good act, where a good act you're trying to keep fresh, and a dad joke is best when it's not.
Yeah. But I mean, like I have certain spots in my show where like the comedy has to change year to year. Mm-hmm. There's the one where I say, if I'm French, being French is an excuse for anything that may go wrong in the show. If I trip on the stage, I'm French. If I slip up on my words, I'm French. And then it's some sort of topical reference. So the year that Game of Thrones finished, it was a long diatribe about Game of Thrones. If I should decide to run a series that has been built up and been awesome, all 7 seasons with a terrible lack of closure and awfulness. I'm not French, but I'm still just working through that. Sorry, guys. And then this year it was, if I should suddenly break out into hello, we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. So I don't know if that's quite a dad joke, but it's definitely, it's not a great joke. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But that's the fun part of it is that kind of like, dad Christmas cracker joke that like I love making those jokes and people be like, it's not funny. I'm like, I'm making me laugh. I don't care if you're laughing.
I'm having a good time. As Sess has said many times, it's like half the time we're just up here to amusing ourselves. You're just along for the ride.
And now you do a pretty good Sess.
I feel like I just always turned him into like some weird like trucker cowboy type, which is not what he is. He looks like.
That's what he sounds like.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
He has the greatest movie man voice of any real human being I've ever met. And like I work in radio, I've met a lot of really good voices, but he is just like in a world. Like I can't even do it. I can't. Yeah. But he gets that resonance. He gets that timbre.
And you guys now do like a closing show, or at least you did it this year. Is that something that you've been doing for a while?
The secret show.
The secret show. We've been doing this. This actually started in 2010, and it's had many different iterations. But so the secret show. I mean, do you want the full history of the secret show, or? I
mean, is it a secret?
It used to be a secret, not anymore.
Sure.
We had a woman working there. Her name was Scarlett Letter.
Okay.
And it was a joke off the Scarlet Letter, and basically that she was just a very loose woman, and her show was all about her being a very loose woman. So she would start the day with an A on her chest,
and
then after a couple hours, it would go to an E on her chest, and then it would like by the end of the day, she would be at X, or as she would say Z, because she was Canadian. But so she invited me and the Washing Well Wenches just to do like a stupid improv show at the end of the day. And I was like, yeah, sure. Make some extra money in the hat, whatever.
Yep.
So we started doing that. She left after 1 year. We tried to do it on ourselves. It didn't really work all that much. We didn't do it for a year. And then we had a bunch of different variety acts there that were all willing to give it a shot and commit to doing it as well. So it was me, Paulo Garbanzo, Acrobatrix, who at the time were performing as Vicious and Delicious. And we kind of put together a show. And then after 2 years, I think both Paulo and Acrobatrix were gone. So it was just kind of like me and Sess left. And I was like, well, let's see what we can put together. And at this point, we've gone on 3 or 4 years where every year the secret show is completely different. And about 50% of it is improvised at this point, I would say. Like it's sort of like if I were to ask you to play out an improvised acting scene, I would say like the lines aren't written down, but you need to, in the course of this scene, establish that, I don't know, your son is missing and that you want a divorce, and you figure out a way to get there. And that's kind of where we are.
So is it like you kind of
extremely
have
dark things,
but you kind of have like these are the tricks or stunts we want to perform.
Yeah.
And then you weave your way to it.
Yeah. And there are certain like setup lines, like with the French accent focus bit, which of course the French is pronounced fuckus. I told Sess, I was like, just at some point during the show, doesn't matter where, you just need to make fun of my French accent and just say that it's bad.
Yeah.
And you can figure out how you want to do it. But once you do that, I will do this.
Yeah. Nice. And so when these shows change, or you want to make the changes to your own act, like how much time goes into that? Because I'm assuming the tricks are relatively the same.
Yeah. So the tricks, it depends. I mean, so like certain tricks you really need to rehearse. Certain tricks you can kind of do once or twice, and you're like, I have a feel for this, or like, just my basic proficiency in whipping. I don't need to put in a ton of rehearsal. And if I mess up, it's not a huge deal.
Right.
The tricks where if I do mess up, it's a big deal. Those are the ones that I will make sure that I'm practicing properly, making sure that, I know how to do them. But as far as writing new material, what takes the longest is the comedy and figuring out where the jokes are and how to make it flow without feeling like it was just popped into the show for no reason at all.
Yeah.
And so this past year, I added the bit where I whip a target in between my legs. And I warned the audience straight up front. I was like, look, this is still a new act. I'm still figuring out some of the jokes. I'm still figuring out the trick a little bit. But I was like, I even turned that into a joke where I said, we are still working out some of the kinks in this trick, which I have been told is a word you should not use in a whip act, but nevertheless, here we are. So I don't know, as far as time wise, I'm not sure how long it takes. I would say it really depends on how much time I can get to rehearse. And that's the issue, with a full-time job. Do I have time to commit to this new bit? I have one bit that I've wanted to put in the show for 10 years, but it, would probably require 6 months of performing and strength to be able to do it properly and not mess it up, because it's a trick that you can't mess up.
Yeah. So is that kind of balance between like your work and your, I don't know, do you call it your side hustle? Like, or is it just another?
I think I call one my job and the other my real job.
Yeah.
But yeah, side hustle works as well. I always, it's funny because I always jokingly say that BUR is my real job, even though I obviously have an appreciation for the arts. I think arts are a real job. Mm-hmm. But I said that to another performer one time. I was like, well, I have a real job. I didn't mean it as a diss.
Yeah.
But he absolutely took it that way. I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't, like, if there's anyone who's going to appreciate, people who work in the circus, it's going to be the person who grew up in the circus.
Right.
So
but it is a weird, like, I got laid off from my 9-to-5 day job because of COVID. Yep. And now I'm full-time with Inebri-art. And when people say to me, be like, oh, you're not going to get a real job, I get really like, rah, what do you mean? But then I say the same thing, and it's like, yeah, why do I get so mad when other people say it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the kind of thing where just the nature of the way it's delivered, you got to get a real job. The emphasis on the word real is just immediately comes across as standoffish or dismissive. And that's, I think, the problem for a lot of people. But I mean, this is a real job. This absolutely is your real job. And, it's a real job for many people, and it's providing a valuable service. I've seen the meme a couple of times, which is, just remember that when the world shut down, that you turned to artists to keep you sane.
Yeah, for sure.
That's an important thing to remember.
I don't know if we would call Tiger King artists, but sure. People made it.
Fair enough.
That kind of ties in.
Oh yeah, that does. Yeah.
Mm.
That's got a season 2, doesn't it, Hannah?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
I honestly didn't make it through the full entirety of the first season.
I managed to. I had a lot of nothing to do.
Yeah.
And I just, didn't have enough wherewithal to just be like, it was just a dark time, and I just didn't.
Oh yeah.
Didn't want to make it any darker.
Well, it was just like one of those, like, I didn't even have the mental capacity to be like, this is garbage. It was just like, I know it's garbage, and I'm just gonna let it run.
Yeah. It was interesting because going back to that whole, I was always in the office. I never got sent home for quarantine. Yeah. It was like I was looking at all my friends who are like, I have all this time to like learn these new skills or learn these new hobbies, and I'm just like, I don't know. I've got an extra half hour because it doesn't take as long to drive to and from the office, I guess.
But it's interesting because we only started doing Zoom interviews because of COVID. Now we're continuing it. But I would say it's almost a 50-50 split between creatives that were like, oh, I have so much more time to work, and I'm spending the whole thing in the studio, and I have a whole new album. And then people like myself who were like, I have zero creative interest. I, have been watching YouTube for the past 4 days and couldn't tell you what I'm watching because I don't remember. Like, it was so soul sucking that just like that kind of lack of being able to get out. And I'm just wasn't good.
Yeah. I've had those moments too, where it's sort of like, it's hard to get the motivation to be creative and to do things. I mean, I think of Bo Burnham's Inside, where like he takes us through that, where he's like, I guess maybe I'll try to be creative. We'll see. but I don't know. I don't think I ever thought of trying to learn new tricks, although I did end up doing that eventually. But sort of at the early point, I was so focused on like, all right, I need to buckle down. I need to, make sure that I'm giving my all at WBUR. As I said, it sort of felt like the amount of hours I was working didn't increase, but the amount of work in those hours felt like it tripled.
Yeah.
I remember the first week feeling like it was a year long.
And it had to be like just the weight of it all. Like I had a friend who just like vanished for 2 years, and then like she finally reached out and she's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I've been kind of like missing, but I work for the Board of Health." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like why would I talked to you for 2 years? You're far too busy." No. It was a weird time. It's still a weird time.
It's still a weird time. I mean, I compartmentalize pretty well, and I'm pretty introverted by nature as is. I was having a conversation with someone this week, and I was like, I am very comfortable alone with my thoughts most of the time. So it didn't feel like the emotion of the time got to me. It was just sort of the stress of the work was the biggest thing. And at this point, I feel pretty well adjusted with all of it. Because I mean, during the winter, which is when you most don't want to go out, and be with people because of COVID, is also here in Boston. You don't want to go out because it's ducking cold.
Yeah, it's terrible out. So if you, I should ask, do you have kids? And if you do, like, are you going to encourage them to a creative field, to a more academic field, or balance in between the two?
So I don't have kids right now. It's something we've talked about. And if we have kids, I think I would encourage them to perform just because it's a great way to give yourself an advantage when you're young. Performing paid off my student loans. Not that I had a ton to start with, but it paid off my student loans. And that's pretty freaking huge for our generation. So I think I would encourage them to perform if they can, but only if they want to. I think whatever they want to do, provided it's not like, I don't know, go break into cars on the weekend. I think I'll encourage them in whatever they want to pursue. Because I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to one of my friends from the Big Apple Circus who he grew up fully in the circus, 18 years, lived on the circus lot, has since graduated and now works, I think, for Wikipedia, basically.
The normal progression.
Just like, how you do.
How you do.
The Circus to Wikipedia pipeline is an undercovered story that needs to be addressed.
We're breaking it wide open here on the Inebri-art podcast.
There we go. But I was thinking as he and I were hanging out, I was like, do I regret growing up in the circus? And I was like, no, it was not always fun. It wasn't always easy. But the advantages it's given me now as a younger adult, and now as, I guess, a fully fledged adult, I'm in my 30s now, have been far and beyond whatever, emotional damage I suffered as a child, and well worth it. I'll take the money.
Yeah, it's the one thing I think about as, performing when I was in theater and a musician and whatnot when I was younger, is, I always hear that like, oh, my number one fear is like public speaking or whatever. And that doesn't bother me at all. Like, it's just kind of second nature at this point. A one-on-one conversation, totally different story.
Yep.
But being on stage, I'm like, whatever, doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it's part of the reason I started playing accordion, which I'm still not very good at.
I was gonna say you play accordion. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that you're not aware of that indicates how good I am and how much confidence I feel actually putting that out there.
Yeah.
So I use it mostly for a lot of festivals want you to do street work. They want you to walk around, interact with people.
Okay.
And like you, I'm like, I don't want to have to talk to people when I'm not on stage. Like I'm doing my contracted funny on stage. That's where I do my best work. And so I was like, if I just do like a walk around while playing the accordion, I don't have to talk to people. I can still say I'm entertaining people, and I can tell people that I can't talk and play at the same time, which is true.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
The problem is it turns into this like awkward, weird mix between like me trying to nod and smile, but also listen to what I'm playing, which just like kind of makes me look crazy as people are talking to me. Like, yeah, okay.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I brought this up on the last interview I recorded, and you just made me think of it as Accordion. And I'm going to give this guy a plug because I think everyone should be watching him. He's on TikTok because TikTok's a thing now and makes me feel incredibly old. But I think his name is, oh my God, I want to plug him and I can't. Dylan Hollis, I think is his name. And he is a piano and accordion player. But on TikTok, he makes recipes out of cookbooks from like 1950s and earlier.
Oh no.
So it's like sauerkraut chocolate cake and water pie, and it is fascinating and entertaining to watch.
That all sounds terrible. One. And I'm reminded of the Captain America not Civil War, Winter Soldier quote, where they're like, what's it like now? I haven't been frozen for 7 years. He's like,
yeah.
Food's a lot better now.
Yeah, for sure. And then you go online, you see how he's got like that multiple different notebooks of people telling him to check different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice. Jack, I want to say thank you for coming on the show. Where can people go to hear your news program? It's a midday show, right?
So the news, I'm on the air 9:49 to 4 most days. You can hear that at 90.9 WBUR FM. You can also hear it on WBUR.org or wherever you are in the country. If your local public radio station takes Here and Now, most days you will hear me delivering national headline breaks 18 minutes and 38 minutes past the hour.
Wow. And will you be back at King Richard's Fair this coming year?
I will be back. So we actually just signed a 2-year contract. So I'll be back in 22 and 23, and my whole list of shows that I'm doing, because I just added the weekend at the Maryland Fair this year. Mm-hmm. Full up-to-date show schedule is at jackthewhipper.com.
And for those of us who can't spell, that's WHIPPER.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's the Americanized version of my French name, Jack the Whipper.
Yeah, I think that was the part that made me laugh. One of the hardest when you're like, I'm not Jack the Whipper, and I'm like, oh, yes, dyslexic people their struggle is real. Yeah.
Oh my God, like it's at the point where people have actually started trolling me online. Someone called me Jacques the Whipper. All right. I guess I asked for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you, man, for coming on the show. Thank you, Hanna, for sitting in.
You're welcome.
If you guys want to hear more from Hanna, go check out the Old Colony Cast. It's a lot of fun. She informs me about all things Plymouth and surrounding areas, and I generally jump ahead in whatever note she has just because I'm a terrible human being.
Now, your timing has gotten much better.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll get worse.
We're getting there. And
we'll catch everybody again next week.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.